If you've spent any amount of time in a university dorm room, you've probably had someone called Ethan pass you a joint and say something like, "We don't actually know if any of this is like real, man." Cool.
Wow.
Ooh, wow. You laugh, smoke a bit, try desperately not to cough so as to look cool in front of your new friends, and then realize, wait a sec, how do I know if any of this is real? This could all be a dream, the world could have come into existence 5 minutes ago, you could be a brain in a vat. How do you know that you're not the victim of some incredible illusion? These ideas are examples of skeptical hypotheses, scenarios that aim to highlight that we could be being deceived in some way. A skeptic argument could look like this. If you don't know that the world wasn't created 5 minutes ago, then you don't know if you existed yesterday. You don't know that the world wasn't created 5 minutes ago, therefore you don't know if you existed yesterday. Pretty scary stuff. Ethan's really fucked you up, and not just because he closed all the windows and put a towel under the door. Well, fortunately for you, in the early 20th century, G.E Moore took issue with this kind of argument and created what we now call a Moorean shift. A Moorean shift takes the first premise of the skeptic's argument and uses it against them. Shifting the earlier argument would look like this. If you don't know that the world wasn't created 5 minutes ago, then you don't know if you existed yesterday. You know that you existed yesterday, therefore you know the world wasn't created 5 minutes ago. Moore is trying to advocate for a kind of common sense view of the world. The argument is valid, so for the skeptic to tackle it would require them to attack one of the premises. The first premise is identical to the skeptic's, so they would have to tackle the second, which is, you know that you existed yesterday. I don't know about you, but that's a pretty plausible premise, and I think the skeptic is going to have a hard time taking it down. This is just an example of a Moorean shift that I chose. The original argument that Moore made was in response to external world skepticism. He says, here's a hand, here's another. Therefore, there are at least two objects in the external world. Therefore, the external world exists. What Moore relies on here is a self-evident truth, the existence of hands. Someone's told him that hands might not exist, and he's gone, nope, there's one right here. Now, the skeptic watching this might be yelling at the screen that he has totally missed the point. Our belief in hands could itself be a part of the illusion, so to say that we have knowledge about the external world assumes that there is one, which is just begging the question against the skeptic. What makes Moorean shifts powerful, though, are their plausibility. Let's take a look at the two arguments from earlier. The Moorean shift doesn't debunk the skeptic's argument. In fact, I couldn't tell you where either argument fails. They're both valid, they both have premises that aren't obviously false, yet they both have conclusions that contradict each other. So, what do we do here? Moore's goal is to get us to compare the plausibility of each argument's second premise, as that's the defining difference between the two. Ask yourself, which of these premises is more plausible to you? You don't know that the world wasn't created 5 minutes ago, or you know that you existed yesterday. Personally, I find the second much more convincing. The skeptic argument isn't guaranteed to fail, but the Moorean argument seems much more likely to be true. I mean, to refute Moore's original argument requires finding a premise that's more plausible than there are hands, which is about as plausible as it gets. It turns out Moorean shifts have been deployed before Moore made them popular. In Plato's work, Zeno of Elea made arguments against the existence of motion. He pointed out that to move some distance requires that you move an infinitely small distance an infinite number of times. He argued, if anything moves, then it performs an infinite number of tasks. Nothing can perform an infinite number of tasks. Therefore, nothing moves. Upon hearing this, Diogenes the Cynic simply stood up and walked away. What Diogenes is doing is the same thing that Moore did. Whatever Zeno's premises are, we have to ask ourselves, are they more plausible than things move? I don't think so. Zeno's probably made a mistake somewhere. Moorean arguments are also used when defending against moral error theory. Error theorists claim that there are no moral properties, and we're just confused somehow. Slavery isn't wrong, charity isn't good, good and bad just don't exist. There are many stories explaining our confusion, but the most popular one these days is evolution. We've evolved to believe that we should engage in cooperative behaviors because the people that engage in cooperative behaviors tend to do better in the reproductive arena. There's been a lot of ink spilled on evolutionary debunking arguments, and I'm not going to go into full detail here, but it is worth pointing out that it is a controversial position to accept. Most philosophers don't accept evolutionary debunking arguments, so again we have to ask ourselves, which is more plausible here? None of our moral beliefs are true because evolution explains them all, a position that's controversial amongst experts, or even if everyone thought it was fine, slavery would still be bad. I feel like premise 2 wins that contest. If you'd like to read more about Moorean arguments against error theory, I'll link to Eric Sampson's paper on it in the description down below. So don't worry, you probably have hands, and the world is probably older than 5 minutes. As usual, subscribe for more videos, and I'll see you next time. Oh my god.